The galaxy had grown comfortable. For 3 centuries, no power had truly threatened the balance of the Concord. The great stellar empires, scaled, silicon-born, radiant, or void-adapted, had divided space between themselves with the precision of mathematicians and the arrogance of gods. Borders shifted only through negotiation. Conflicts ended in arbitration chambers rather than firestorms. War, as the younger species understood it, had become a relic, studied, simulated, safely contained. Humanity arrived during this long peace. They came late, crawling out of a quiet yellow system on the Orion spur, blinking against a galactic civilization already old when their ancestors learned to shape metal. Their first ships were small. Their technology, by Concord standards, was inelegant. Chemical propulsion lingered in their design philosophies far longer than anyone thought reasonable. Their energy signatures were noisy, their hulls blunt, their mathematics stubbornly inefficient. They were granted observer status. The Concord's historians recorded humanity with polite detachment, ambitious primates, rapid technological curve, emotionally volatile, militarily unremarkable. What the record did not say, but what everyone understood, was that humans survived because the galaxy allowed it. For a time, humanity seemed to accept this arrangement. They traded rare isotopes from asteroid belts others ignored. They built stations at crossroads no one wanted. They listened far more than they spoke. When insulted, they responded with diplomacy. When provoked, they withdrew. The galaxy mistook restraint for weakness. The first real test came at the edge of the Caro's expanse. The Velathi Imperium, arthropoidal, ancient, and proud, had been expanding its influence along the spur for decades. Humanity's colonies lay inconveniently close to Velathi logistical routes. At first, there were tariffs, then inspections, then seizures. A human freighter vanished, then another. The Terran diplomatic corps filed protests. The Imperium ignored them. In the Concord Council, the matter was discussed with mild irritation. Humanity's representative, a middle-aged woman with iron-gray hair and tired eyes, stood alone at her podium while towering alien forms debated above her. The Imperium assures us these are misunderstandings, intoned Speaker Relaxis, a being of light refracted through crystalline flesh. Trade lanes are complex. My people are dying, the human said quietly. There was an uncomfortable pause, then procedural noise drowned her out. 3 cycles later, the Velathi fleet arrived at New Carthage. It was not a full invasion, merely a demonstration. 30 warships descended into orbit, their biometal hulls shimmering with dominance displays meant to terrify less developed species. They transmitted demands: relinquish mining rights, dismantle orbital defenses, accept Velathi oversight. New Carthage had defenses, old ones, human-made, they powered up anyway. The battle lasted 7 minutes. Velathi plasma cut through human stations with surgical ease. Kinetic rounds shattered against layered shields designed for wars long past. When it was over, New Carthage burned in vacuum, its debris forming a thin, glittering ring around a scarred planet. The galaxy watched. Some expressed regret, others annoyance at the disruption. None intervened. Humanity went silent. No protests, no emergency sessions, no demands for sanctions. Terran channels went dark except for evacuation notices and relief coordination. Their colonies pulled back, consolidating inward. Shipyards closed, trade slowed. Within a decade, many assumed humanity would fade. Another brief, flickering species, unable to survive its first brush with galactic indifference. The Velasi Imperium moved on. They did not notice the change at first. Their sensors began detecting strange gravitational echoes near human space, brief, tightly contained distortions that vanished before analysis could lock on. A Velathi scout ship failed to return from a routine patrol, then two more. Imperial tacticians blamed pirates, or navigational errors, or human sabotage, though the idea drew laughter in the war chambers. Humans lack the capacity, one admiral declared, mandibles clicking in amusement. Their ships cannot hide from us. Yet Velathi convoys began rerouting anyway. Meanwhile, beyond Concord charts, humanity was doing something the galaxy had never seen them do before. They were building, quietly, obsessively, without compromise. Not fleets, a ship. Deep within a red dwarf system stripped of habitable worlds, human engineers dismantled entire planets to feed orbital foundries. The process took years. No broadcasts leaked. No signatures escaped. The system itself was wrapped in a shell of gravitational interference that made it appear empty, dead, forgotten. Within that shell, a warship took shape. It was not elegant. It was massive. Layer upon layer of art. More composites engineered to absorb, redirect, and remember impact. Power cores stacked redundantly, each capable of sustaining the vessel alone. Weapon systems recessed so deeply they might as well have been buried. No decorative hull plating, no display lights. Every design choice served one purpose: endurance. This ship was not meant to win battles. It was meant to survive wars. When it was complete, humanity argued over whether to use it. Some said restraint had already failed them. Others feared what would happen if the galaxy saw what they had become. In the end, the decision came not from generals or politicians, but from the refugees of New Carthage. "Let them see," one survivor said, "not our anger, our memory." The ship was named TNS Revenant. When it finally moved, the galaxy did not notice at first. Hyperspace folded silently as the Revenant crossed distances that would have required fleets of relay jumps for others. Its drive left no wake, only a brief absence, like space forgetting something had passed through. The first to detect it was a Concord listening array near Velathi territory. The signal made no sense, a mass reading equivalent to a small moon, moving with impossible precision, emitting almost nothing. Automated warnings triggered across the Imperium. Admiral Threxel stared at the projection in disbelief. "That's not a fleet," he said. "That's a mistake." Then the object decelerated. It emerged at the edge of Velatha-controlled space, perfectly aligned with the Imperium's primary shipyard system. No weapons fire, no broadcast, just presence. A single human warship, larger than any vessel the Velathi had ever built, hanging in the void like a held breath. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt something unfamiliar. Unease. And somewhere deep in the Concorde's ancient archives, an old warning, once dismissed as myth, quietly reactivated. Beware species that learn patience before power. The Velathi Imperium had faced rebellion before. It had crushed them with methodical efficiency, burning hive worlds, sterilizing asteroid clans, rewriting border maps with plasma and decree. The Imperium understood war as a language of dominance, force applied swiftly, visibly, and overwhelmingly. Fear maintained order, order preserved empire. What it did not understand was silence. The human warship did nothing. No communication beam, no targeting lock, no maneuvering thrusters firing in threat patterns. It simply remained motionless relative to the system's star, precisely positioned between the Velathi shipyards and the hyperlane junctions beyond. Traffic halted. Merchant vessels aborted jumps mid-transition, emergency dropping into real space light minutes away, their crews shaken by sensor ghosts that insisted something enormous was blocking their path. Defense platforms powered up. Patrol craft formed loose perimeters, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Admiral Threxil convened his war council within the hour. "This is provocation," hissed General Keeper S. Sarok, her carapace flaring crimson. "A challenge to sovereignty." "A single ship," another officer added. "Even if massive, it cannot withstand our fleets." Threxil watched the tactical display in silence. The human vessel's sensor shadow was wrong. Its mass profile shifted subtly depending on scan frequency, as if parts of it existed half a second out of phase with reality. Attempts to map its internal structure failed outright. Return signals simply vanished. "Has it targeted us?" Threxil asked. "No, High Admirals." "Has it broadcast any demand?" "No." "Then it is not a challenge," Threxil said slowly. "It is a question." The council stilled. "What question?" Sarok demanded. Threxil did not answer. He ordered a probe launched instead. The drone, an armored, autonomous sensor platform, accelerated toward the human vessel, its instruments calibrated for everything from exotic radiation to psychic field distortion. As it closed the distance, the Revenant did not react. At 1,000 kilometers, the drone's feed began to degrade. At 500, data packets arrived out of sequence. At 100, the feed cut entirely. Moments later, the drone reappeared, drifting, intact, but dead. Its memory cores were empty, scrubbed so clean that even the substrate lattice had been restructured. The Revenant remained silent. That was when the Velathi Imperium did something it had not done in over 100 cycles. It contacted the Concorde. Emergency session protocols lit across the galaxy. Delegates arrived in haste, some physically, others via hard-light avatars projected into the Great Chamber. The atmosphere crackled with unease as the holographic image of the human vessel rotated above the central dais. The human representative stood again at her podium. She had not changed, same iron-gray hair, same steady posture, but those who watched closely noticed the difference in her eyes, where once there had been fatigue. Now there was something colder, older. Speaker Relaxes addressed her carefully. Ambassador Hale, your species has deployed a significant asset into contested space. Contested, Hale echoed. That system has been Velathi territory since before your species discovered stellar fusion. Murmurs rippled. The presence of your warship risks destabilizing. It is unarmed, Hale said. Laughter burst from several delegates. Even Threxil allowed a sharp click of disbelief. With respect, Relaxes said, that claim strains credulity. Hale nodded once. Then allow me to clarify, it is not actively armed. The chamber fell silent. Humanity has not fired upon the Imperium, Hale continued. We have not interdicted trade. We have not issued demands. We have not violated Concord law. You have threatened an Imperial core system, Essarok snapped. No, Hale said, we have remembered one. She gestured, and the holograms shifted. New Carthage appeared, before and after, a thriving blue-green world reduced to a halo of debris. Casualty numbers scrolled, names followed, too many to read. For 10 years, Hale said, we asked for justice. We were told to accept misunderstandings, to be patient, to trust in process. Her gaze lifted, locking onto the Velathi delegation. We did. Threxil felt something twist in his thorax. What do you want? He asked. Hale did not answer immediately. Instead, she tapped a control on her console. Across the galaxy, every major sensor network registered a fluctuation. Not an attack, a demonstration. The Revenant moved. It did not accelerate. It shifted, sliding a fraction of a degree out of conventional space, then back in. The maneuver displaced nothing, generated no shockwave, yet the gravitational constants of the entire system spiked for exactly 3 seconds. Velathi shipyards screamed alarms as docking pylons sheared free. Moored cruisers tore loose, colliding in slow, catastrophic arcs. A moonlet, long stabilized by orbital correction arrays, began to drift. Then everything stopped. The system settled into a new equilibrium, marginally altered, permanently. That, Hale said quietly, was a course correction. The ship's drive is designed to fold space locally. We use it for navigation. Relaxus's voice wavered. That violates. No law, Hale said. We checked. Threxil stared at the display, understanding dawning like a cold star. The ship was not threatening destruction. It was demonstrating control. Why show us this? He asked. Hale met his gaze across light years. Because this is the last time we will explain ourselves. The Concord chamber erupted, delegates shouting, translating, demanding clarification. Hale waited until the noise crested, then raised her hand. We are not here to conquer, she said. We are not here to rule. Humanity has no interest in empire. A pause. But we are done being prey. She gestured again. The hologram split, revealing a map of human space, or what the galaxy thought was human space. Then the overlays peeled back. Hidden shipyards, black site systems, manufacturing rings around dead stars. Fleet symbols, dozens of them, previously masked behind layers of sensor obfuscation the Concorde had never detected. Gasps echoed through the chamber. For a century, Hale said, you assumed we were behind, that we struggled to keep up, that our silence meant fear. Her voice hardened. We were not catching up, we were digging in. Threxel felt the weight of history press down on him. The Imperium had measured humanity by visible strength, fleet counts, territorial claims, political noise. It had never measured resolve. What happens now? Relaxis asked. Hale's expression softened, not with mercy, but with certainty. Now, she said, the Revenant will remain where it is. It will not fire unless fired upon. It will not move unless moved. And if we attack it, Sarok demanded. Hale looked at her. Then you will learn why we built only one. The session adjourned in chaos. Within hours, Velasi fleets mobilized, not to attack, but to observe. Dozens of warships took up positions at extreme range, their weapons powered but unfired. No one wanted to be the first to test the human claim. Days passed, then weeks. Trade through the region collapsed. Insurance markets imploded. Border skirmishes elsewhere flared as smaller powers sensed weakness. The Concorde's authority began to fray, not because of what humanity had done, but because of what it might do. And still, the Revenant waited. Until, on the 43rd day, a Velasi captain made a mistake. A patrol cruiser, young commander, ambitious, eager to prove imperial dominance, advanced beyond its assigned perimeter. Its weapons systems locked briefly onto the human ship, just long enough to register as a targeting attempt. The Revenant responded, not with weapons fire, with a transmission. It was not sent to the cruiser. It was sent to Evo. Why Velathi ship in the system? A single data packet. Inside it, sensor recordings from New Carthage, unedited, unfiltered, the screams of decompression, the frantic evacuation calls, the moment the planet's crust fractured under sustained bombardment. Then a final line of text, stark and unadorned. We remember, do you? The cruiser's captain ordered a retreat. Too late. Space around the cruiser thickened. Its engines flared uselessly as local physics shifted, trapping the vessel in a pocket of distorted inertia. The Revenant did not fire, but the cruiser began to collapse under stresses it could not shed. Hull plates buckled, systems failed, crew survived, but the ship was rendered permanently inoperable, frozen in a cocoon of warped spacetime. A warning shot that left no dead. But no doubt. Across the galaxy, fear took root. Because humanity had finally shown its hand. And it was holding something the galaxy had never prepared for, a power that did not seek to destroy, but to decide. The galaxy's reaction was not unified. Some powers called for immediate sanctions against humanity, citing destabilization, precedent, and the existential danger of allowing any one species such leverage. Others argued, quietly at first, that the fault lay with the Velathi Imperium. A few smaller civilizations, long bruised by imperial misunderstandings, watched the standoff with something dangerously close to hope. The Concorde fractured along old lines, and while diplomats argued, the Velassi Imperium prepared for war. High Admiral Threxel did not want this conflict. He had studied humanity's history, what little had been shared, and recognized the pattern too late. A species that fought itself to near extinction more than once did not fear escalation the way others did. It feared repetition. But the Imperium was built on dominance. To withdraw now would invite rebellion across 1,000 systems. So Threxel authorized Operation Iron Mantle. 3 battle fleets, over 800 warships, carriers, siege platforms, planet crackers held in reserve. The armada would converge on the shipyard system from multiple vectors, overwhelm the human vessel with volume and firepower, and restore imperial credibility in one decisive strike. They told themselves numbers would prevail. They were wrong. The Revenant detected the fleets long before they reached weapons range. Its sensors were not passive receivers, but active interrogators, subtle distortions woven into the fabric of space that returned information as absence rather than signal. On the bridge, Commander Elias Cade stood with hands clasped behind his back. He had served 30 years in the Terran fleet, though no record of that service existed beyond a black archive. The Revenant was his first and last command. "Confirm fleet vectors," he said calmly. "Confirmed," replied his tactical officer. 821 vessels, standard Velathi doctrine, they're expecting to trade losses. Cade nodded. "They always do." "Orders?" asked another voice. Cade looked at the tactical display, a storm of red icons converging on their solitary blue mark. "Stage 1, he said. Deep within the Revenant's hull, systems awakened that had never been tested outside simulation. The first effect was subtle. As the Velathi fleets entered the outer system, their navigational solutions began to drift. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to force micro-corrections. Then more, formation cohesion frayed as each ship fought slightly different gravitational vectors. "Electronic warfare?" a Velathi officer asked. "No emissions detected," came the reply. "It's the system itself. The star's mass profile is fluctuating." It was. The Revenant had deployed a lattice of localized spacetime anchors, micro-singularities stabilized and arranged in patterns that bent gravitational flow like currents in water. The effect was invisible, inescapable, and profoundly disorienting. Velathi formations slowed. Cade watched impassively. Stage 2. The Revenant fired its first weapon. There was no beam, no projectile. Just absence. A section of space 5 kilometers across, directly in the path of the lead Velathi cruiser, simply ceased to exist for 0.3 seconds. When reality reasserted itself, the cruiser was gone, not destroyed, not debris. Gone. Sensors reported nothing, no energy spike, no radiation, just a hole where matter had been. Shock rippled through the Velathi armada. "Hold formation," Threxel commanded, though his voice betrayed strain. "Return fire." Plasma lances and gravitic torpedoes streaked toward the Revenant. They impacted its outer hull and bent away. The armor did not absorb the energy, it redirected it, feeding power back into the ship's systems. Cade felt the deck hum beneath his boots. Stage 3. The Revenant's weapon ports opened, not outward, but inward, folding sections of its hull into higher dimensional pockets. What emerged were not cannons, but frameworks, vast, rotating structures that altered probability fields within their arcs. Velathi targeting solutions collapsed. Weapons misfired. Torpedoes detonated prematurely or veered into empty space. Some turned back on their launch platforms as if reality itself rejected their intent. Panic spread. This was not a battle as the Imperium understood it. There was no exchange, no attrition curve, just erosion of certainty, of control, of doctrine. Threxel watched ships die without dying, vanish without explosion, fail without cause. "Cease fire," he ordered. "Cease fire." The order went out, but not all ships could comply. Some no longer trusted their own sensors. Others had lost command cohesion entirely. Cade raised a hand. Stage 4, limited. The Revenant projected a narrow beam, not of energy, but of information. It targeted command vessels only, flooding their systems with data harvested from Velathi archives over decades. Tactical doctrines, contingency plans, internal political communications. Threxel's flagship shuddered as its displays overloaded. "You've been studying us," he whispered. Cade opened a channel directly to the High Admiral. "Studying implies curiosity," he said. "This was preparation." "Why not destroy us?" Threxel demanded. "You clearly can." Cade's expression did not change. "Because if we do, the galaxy learns the wrong lesson." The human commander gestured, and the tactical display shifted. Across the system, the Velathi fleets were immobilized, not trapped but held. Their drives functioned, their weapons remained intact, yet any attempt at coordinated movement dissolved into chaos as local spacetime refused to cooperate. "You can leave," Cade said, "one ship at a time, disarmed, logging your withdrawal publicly." Threxel stared at the display. 800 warships, brought low without a single human casualty. "This will break the Imperium," he said. "No," Cade replied, "it will reveal it." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Threxel inclined his head, a gesture of surrender older than the Imperium itself. "We withdraw." The Revenant powered down its weapon frameworks. The spacetime lattice relaxed. One by one, Velathi ships limped away, broadcasting their retreat across open channels. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. Empires that had dominated for millennia had just been humbled, not by conquest, but by restraint backed with undeniable power. Within days, rebellions flared across Velathi space. Client species refused tribute. Border systems declared neutrality. The Imperium's myth of invincibility shattered. The Concord reconvened in emergency session. This time, the human delegation was not alone at its podium. Representatives from smaller civilizations stood beside Ambassador Hale, species that had never dared speak against the great powers before. Speaker Relaxis addressed her with something new in his voice. "Respect. You have changed the balance of the galaxy," he said. Hale nodded. "No, we revealed it." "What does humanity want?" another delegate asked, fear barely masked. Hale considered her answer carefully. "We want what we always asked for," she said. "Accountability, memory, and a seat at the table that cannot be ignored." "And if the Concord refuses?" Hale's gaze flicked briefly to the hologram of the Revenant, still hanging in Velathi space like a silent judge. "Then," she said, "we will continue to remember." As the session dissolved into hurried negotiations, Cade stood alone on the Revenant's bridge, watching the last Velathi ship jump away. His executive officer approached quietly. "Sir, long-range sensors are lighting up, multiple powers mobilizing fleets." Cade nodded. He had expected this. "They're afraid," the officer said. "Yes," Cade replied. "Now comes the part that matters." Outside, stars burned cold and patient. The galaxy was waking up to a new truth. Humanity was no longer hiding. And not everyone would accept that peacefully. The galaxy stood at a crossroads it had not planned for. In the weeks following the Velathi withdrawal, fleets across known space mobilized, not in unified aggression, but in anxious calculation. The old powers watched humanity with a mixture of awe and dread. The smaller civilizations watched with something far more dangerous: expectation. The Concord itself teetered. For centuries, its authority had rested on a simple premise: that no single species could enforce its will without collective consent. The Revenant shattered that illusion. It had done so without conquest, without bloodshed on a galactic scale, and that made it far more unsettling than any war of annihilation. Power that chose not to dominate was unpredictable. Commander Elias Cade felt the weight of that unpredictability every hour. The Revenant had repositioned itself, at humanity's request, into interstellar neutral space, equidistant from three major trade corridors. Its presence alone stabbed. Allied routes that had been abandoned out of fear. Pirates vanished. Border skirmishes cooled. No one wanted to provoke the ship that had humiliated an empire without firing a traditional shot. Yet peace built on fear was not peace at all. Ambassador Hale arrived aboard the Revenant under heavy protocol, though none of it was truly necessary. Cade met her at the observation deck, where the galaxy stretched out in quiet indifference. "They're calling it the human question now," she said, leaning against the railing. "As if we're a problem to be solved." Cade allowed himself a thin smile. "We always were." "The Concord is offering reforms," Hale continued. "Binding arbitration, enforcement mechanisms, shared oversight of military actions." "And enforcement?" Cade asked. Hale met his gaze. "They want us to provide it." Cade looked back out at the stars. "Of course they do." A week later, the answer came in fire. It began at the edge of known space, where an ancient coalition calling itself the Ascendancy launched a preemptive strike, not at Earth, but at a human colony world named Laconia. The logic was cold and clear. If humanity's strength lay in memory and restraint, then provoking grief might force escalation or reveal limits. The Ascendancy fleet did not expect resistance. They found it. Human defense platforms activated from beneath Laconia's crust, sleek, angular constructs that had been mistaken for geological anomalies. Orbital space folded as reinforcement ships arrived not through hyperspace lanes, but through pinpoint translations that ignored conventional entry vectors. The battle was brief. Human ships did not pursue fleeing Ascendancy vessels. They disabled engines, neutralized weapons, captured crews. Every action was recorded. When news reached the Concorde, panic followed. This was no longer a single warship anomaly. Humanity's doctrine, restraint paired with absolute capability, was systemic. The Concorde demanded an emergency summit. This time, humanity set the terms. The chamber was fuller than ever, every major power present, every minor one watching closely. At the center of the room floated a new hologram, not the Revenant, but a simple timeline. Human history. Wars fought, lessons learned, extinctions narrowly avoided. Ambassador Hale spoke without flourish. "We did not build weapons because we love war," she said. "We built them because we survived it." Images shifted, cities rebuilt, treaties signed, old enemies becoming allies. We learned something the hard way. Peace enforced by fear collapses. Peace enforced by memory endures. A delegate from the Ascendancy spoke, voice trembling. "You humiliated us. You exposed us." "Yes," Hale said, "and we spared you." The chamber quieted. "We could have erased the Velathi Imperium," Hale continued. "We could have shattered the Ascendancy fleets and claimed territory while the galaxy reeled." She gestured to the timeline. "That is not who we chose to be." Speaker Relaxus inclined his luminous head. "Then what is your intent?" Hale took a breath. "To stand where no one else could, to be the reminder, not of our power, but of the cost of forgetting each other's humanity." There it was, the unspoken truth. Humanity was not claiming dominion. It was claiming responsibility. The Concorde voted. Not unanimously, nothing ever was, but overwhelmingly the motion passed, the formation of a new enforcement arm, bound by strict limitations, transparent oversight, and a single deterrent doctrine. The Revenant would not be alone forever, but it would remain the standard by which all force was measured. Months passed. Trade resumed, borders stabilized. The Velathi Imperium reformed under internal pressure, its conquests unraveling into federated systems. Smaller civilizations found voices they had never dared raise. And humanity. It did not expand aggressively. It did not posture. It maintained its colonies, strengthened its alliances, and quietly began dismantling some of the more terrifying systems it had built, locking them away behind treaties and shared safeguards. The Revenant remained on patrol. Its presence felt more than seen. Commander Cade often thought of New Carthage, of the debris ring still orbiting that broken world, left untouched as a memorial. no reconstruction, no reclamation. Memory mattered. On the anniversary of the battle that changed everything, Cade stood alone on the observation deck once more. A message arrived, encrypted priority. It was from Ambassador Hale. They're asking if we regret it. Cade considered the question as stars slid past. No, he typed back, but we must never grow comfortable. Because comfort, he knew, was what had nearly destroyed them once. And far beyond human space, in corners of the galaxy still untouched by Concord law, ancient intelligences listened. They had felt the shift, not the violence, but the restraint. A species that could end empires and chose not to. Though that was something to fear, and something, perhaps, to respect. The galaxy would never again let its guard down around humanity. Not because humans were the deadliest force among the stars, but because they remembered what happened when no one else did. And they refused to let it happen again.